Hey adventurers, so today is going to be our wrap-up for the month of April 2023.
Okay.
I don't know how many books I have, and I don't know how many books you have.
I have
got
369,
7
which I didn't realize until I looked at my bookshelf and was like, oh, I read that book this month. Oh, I read that book this month. So.
Okay, you start then.
Okay. I want to do the ones that I don't own. I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is the first book in the...
Lunar Chronicles.
Thank you. The Lunar Chronicles. This has been out for a while, not a new story by any means, but it's a Cinderella retelling set in a futuristic world. The things I liked about it is that it heavily used androids and, not just androids, cyborgs. Cyborgs and androids were both really present in it, and I liked how the main character, who was a cyborg, how that was so tied into the society and the strife that was within the society because of the cyborg. Some people saying she's not fully human, so we don't need to treat her as such, and then some people advocating the other way. So it was really interesting to see that. The story ended a little bit unsatisfactory. It's definitely set up for you to read the rest of the books in the Chronicles, and I think I might sometime. I listened to the audiobook and it was pretty enjoyable. Some of the characters, it wasn't a difficult book to read by any means, so I might read some more when I'm ready for something light and of that style again, so.
First book that I finished in April was The Lair of Bones, which is the 4th book in the Rune Lords by David Farland. So this is, it's actually also the end of the first arc, so I don't know exactly how, because I haven't read books 5 through 8 yet, but it's basically, these first 4 books are an arc and the second 4 books are an arc. So this is the completion of this first storyline, and I've been very much enjoying this series. The book 4, there was, again, happens very, very quickly. I think book 4 takes place over the course of a day and a half or 2 days or something like that. So there's a lot of things happening in a very, very short amount of time, and there's in-world explanations for how that is even possible. So it's cool and it's well done, and I did like the ending of this first arc.
Okay, so another book I read in April was A Hiding Place by Corey ten Boom. I really liked this. I have watched a film rendition of The Hiding Place, which was good, but I think that the story was very encouraging to read, seeing Corey ten Boom's relationship with the Lord and her life and how the Lord worked in it to use her as a witness to so many people and as a help to them, and how she wrote it in a very retrospective view, so she was more separate from it when she was able to look back and see how the Lord was working. So that was really cool to read, and I found it really encouraging, and I would definitely recommend it for most people.
So the second book that I finished was also on audio, and this is Secret Project number 2 by Brandon Sanderson. And if you don't want to know the title of this book or see the cover of this book, you might want to skip this part, because I'm going to mention those all here. But I'll have it time-stamped, hopefully, if I can remember to do that, and that's a lot more work. Anyways, the book is called The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. Time travel, science fiction, alternate realities type stuff, and it's, I actually really enjoyed this story. I know most people don't, or haven't enjoyed it nearly as much as I did. I thought it was better than Secret Project 1, and I don't know, just kind of everything worked in it for me in ways that I wasn't expecting it to. So I really liked it. I do have a review of it, so you can go watch that if you want to know my full thoughts on it.
Okay, I also read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Rebecca Smith? I don't know. So this was the classic I read this month. I don't know if everyone would consider it a classic, but I first saw it on a classic list.
Betty Smith.
Betty Smith. I had half of it, right? Okay. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is also one of those books that you see like on a wall at Barnes & Noble, so it's kind of cool to be able to, like I said, Barnes & Noble says it's a classic. It was nice to be able to put a story to the name of that book and to really understand what it was all about. And I really like stories that follow a main character from their childhood up into adulthood, and this definitely did that. I don't know if there was something particular you were supposed to get out of this story. I think it illustrated the certain class in Brooklyn and the lifestyle associated with that, and showed how far hard work can go in a person's life. So I really appreciated those things about it. It's not a book I would recommend to everybody, but if you're interested in reading it, I'm always happy to give you more details about it.
So the next one that I finished, I do actually have a physical copy of, but I didn't read it physically. As you'll see as I continue going through this, I didn't finish any physical books this month. For some reason, I did not have very much time to read physically, and I don't know why, but I didn't. So that's the way it is. Anyways, the next book that I finished on audio was The Children of Huron by J.R.R. Tolkien, narrated by Sir Christopher Lee. So that was cool just to hear him, knowing so much about Christopher Lee and his relationship with Lord of the Rings, the fact that he read it every year, that he was the only member of the cast of Lord of the Rings to have ever actually met Tolkien, and just a whole bunch of details like that. It's super cool to hear him narrate this story. But this is also my favorite Tolkien story, so just finally getting to reread it after, I don't know, 10, I guess it was 8 years, I think, since I first read this. No? Quite possibly 10 years, maybe even 11. 10 years, I think, since I first read this. And I haven't read it since. And just, I love this story. It's very much a tragedy and heartbreaking in many ways, but it's just so good and so well written.
I also read Hatchet by Gary Paulson. This is another book that a lot of people would consider it a classic. It's definitely one that at least people where I live are presented in school as required reading. It's about a boy who's in a plane crash in the Canadian Outback, but it's not Australia, because of the area, the northern
Wilderness.
The wilderness of Canada in some ways can be really similar to Alaska wilderness. I was able to really relate to some of the things and just visualize, the foliage and the landscape and the animals and the creatures he was encountering are all things I'm really familiar with. And I've experienced things on a much lighter level than he did. Things like the masses and masses of mosquitoes, and I can relate to some of his experiences, and it all feels so real to me. So reading that story, I didn't watch it. Reading that story was really interesting. I enjoyed it. I loved seeing, once again, how hard work can really change your outlook on things and the way that you really thrive or survive. So that was kind of cool. I wanted to mention, I listened to an audiobook of Hatchet. It's a really short book. It was a 4-hour audiobook, so very short. But this had ambient music in the background, so like really intense parts of the story. So like when the plane was crashing, super dramatic, like music in the background, but then it wouldn't have music in the background the whole time. And it was really weird, honestly. Like, my brain's capable of making things climatic enough without the music, so I don't know. I haven't really read anything that had music in it unless it was like at the very beginning or the very end. So I didn't love that, but other than that, it was great.
The next one I read or listened to was The Deerslayer by James Fenimore Cooper. This is the prequel, I guess is the best way to put it, for The Last of the Mohicans. It takes place before The Last of the Mohicans, but it was the last one that was written of this series, which is the what is it called? Leatherstocking Tales. That is what the series is called, with Deerslayer, Last of the Mohicans, and I think there's 2 or 3 other books in the series besides those. So this was obviously a big classic for me. I know The Last of the Mohicans, I've watched the movie, I think it's a great movie. I haven't read the book yet because I was about to read the book and then I realized, oh wait, The Deerslayer is the prequel, so I should read that one first. You don't have to, but I chose to, and I really enjoyed it. It's set around a single lake, and everything takes place around the one lake, and it's great. Like, it's so well done. I don't know, Cooper's storytelling ability and his way with words just incredible. And I like flowery prose. I like descriptive descriptions. I don't think Kate cares for them as much as I do. So I enjoyed that aspect of it.
So I also read The Looking Glass Wars by Frank Fedor. Been on a Wonderland kick recently due to... What's the book?
The Wonderland Trials.
The Wonderland Trials. You're the one who has to remember the name for me. The Wonderland Trials by Sarah Ella. And I also was refreshed. I guess that's the only thing I've read recently.
Well, I read
You read Alice in
Wonderland,
Wonderland the
yeah.
same month I read the Wonderland Trials. That's right. Anyhow, Patricia Meredith actually was mentioned the Looking Glass Wars, and I was intrigued, so I looked it up and I decided to read it. It was interesting. It was definitely more of like an abstract style retelling of Alice in Wonderland, but it fits so well with the feel of how weird everything is in Alice in Wonderland. It was a little bit slower. There was something about the writing in the story that I didn't love that made it feel slower to me, even though I felt like the pacing was pretty decent throughout the book. You're jumping between the world of Wonderland and also normal world within a set time period, which I don't know what, because I'm really bad about remembering time periods. But it was interesting, and I think I enjoyed it. I like seeing how people retell classic fairy tales and classic stories.
All right, the next book that I read was A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle. This is the third book in the Time Quartet, or Time Quintet,
L'Engle.
because I think there's let's throw back.
Flashback to our first YouTube video ever.
So yeah, this is the third book in whatever this series is. There's this one specifically, the Time Quartet, not the Giver Quartet. That's a different series. But there's 5 books I think in the series. You may hold it. I actually like this one the best of the 3 that I've read so far. It was a bit more grown up, a bit more. They've all been very.
Holy smokes, she wrote a lot of books.
What is the word? It's a synonym for thought-provoking and contemplative.
Ponder. Ponderful.
Stop making noises. Anyways, I can't think anymore, so we're just going to continue on and pretend like I finished that thought and you're understanding what I was trying to say by it. The series is weird. It deals with some weird concepts and theories, of scientific theories and stuff like that, and just the way that they're woven in, the way that the science and the fantasy are combined, really works well in the series, and the style that, I mean, they're very much a YA story, or a middle grade story actually, but that doesn't keep the way that the concepts are utilized ties or feeds into that middle grade storytelling really well, but also doesn't make them feel young. So I don't know, I just really appreciate a lot about this series.
Okay, I read, let's do it in the order I read it in. I read Death and Daisies by Amanda Flower. This is book 2 in a Magic Garden Mystery, the Magic Garden Mystery series. And I didn't know that when I got the book. In my defense, I actually did Google it. 1, to check content, and 2, to check, before I bought it, to check if it was 1 or 2 in a series, and I just must have missed the information that it was book 2. Anyhow, I jumped in and I read it, and I think the author did a fantastic job of filling in the information you needed to know if you were picking this up like I did without reading book 1, and I loved it. It was such a great mystery story, very cozy. I liked the characters a lot that we were following, the main characters. I liked the mystery. I liked just enough complexity to make the story within the story it was uncomfortable, and there was conflict, and there was a murder, so of course there was some conflict going on. I don't know, I really liked it. It was delightful, and because I enjoyed it so much and I really enjoyed the writing, I went and I got Flowers and Foul Play by Amanda Flower, which is book 1 in this series. So I didn't enjoy this one as much, and I think that's because I knew most of the characters and I had information that it basically ruined the mystery. I knew it from the beginning because of what was included in there. They never actually said who the murderer was in that book, so I think Amanda Flower did a really great job of that, but there was enough information that I'm like, wait, this person wasn't doing that in the last book. And so there was enough of that sort of thing that I was able to pick up before I was through about it. And I just like starting in the middle of the character's arc, actually, as opposed to at the beginning of it. So it does have a great first line, and I would like to read it if you would be so kind as to listen. Chapter 1, I will never eat cake again.
It's a horrible first line.
Fits with the story, but I agree.
The next book that I finished was Acceptance by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the third book in the Southern Reach trilogy. The first book is Annihilation, second book is Authority, and third book being Acceptance. And I have enjoyed the series in descending order. So number 1 is my favorite, number 2 my second favorite, number 3 my least favorite. And that's not so much the story's fault. I appreciate the story, and I appreciate the way that they're weaving in the Southern Reach versus the Area X and how those things tie together, and that's kind of what book 3 is about, and I do really appreciate that. And I liked getting some more answers to the series, or to the mysteries and the questions, but there's some things that they purposely didn't answer, and I actually appreciated that they didn't answer them, because I didn't want the answers that it could have been. So basically I didn't want any of the answers to be actual answers. I wanted it to remain a mystery in that way, kind of like how Yoda's species. Yoda is a complete mystery. We don't know that much about him, but we know plenty about him to make us like the character, that type of thing. I'll leave it at that.
So the next book I read was Enhanced by Candace Cade. This is a recent release from Enclave Publishing. I think it was released either in March or April, and I was really excited to be able to jump in when this was recent and read it, because I don't typically do that with books. It was a sci-fi futuristic setting, and I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. The world is one of them. It was a really fantastic world. It's a place where people have a specific abilities, but they're genetic enhancements. Not everyone has them, and it becomes a whole like class society thing. So the world was really well crafted, and once again I just love when things are directly influencing the stories, like people who are enhanced are also directly influencing the world, as in the society and the class. It makes the world feel so real, and the main character was fun to follow, and in the end I really appreciated her choice at the end of the book, which if you've read it you'll understand. Like the very last page, last 2 pages, I just appreciated she had like a level head on her shoulders, and she made a responsible decision and wasn't flighty or turned too much by feelings, and I think that's not something we see a lot in books, but it's still set up for book 2 really well. So, great book.
The next book that I finished is Sins and Sorrows, which is book 1.5 of Protectors of Protani. This is by Mike Molman. It's a self-published book. The first book in the series is Becoming a Druid, and second is To Speak with Elders, I believe. I haven't read To Speak with Elders yet, but this one is kind of an in-between, kind of some, more of like a novella to fill out some more information, build out the world a little bit. I liked Becoming a Druid quite a bit. Sins and Sorrows is actually split into 2 miniature stories, I guess. It tells 2, what's that, novelettes, I don't know. 2 short stories that are told that are used. Actually, they tie together, but they are used to tell this bigger, to fill out this whole book.
It's like books of the Bible.
Words are hard right now. I really liked the first story of the 2. In the second story, I liked the themes that it was dealing with towards the end and how that was working out. But the story itself I didn't care as much for. What else do I need to say about this? I don't know. I like this world. I like Mike Molman's creation of this world, and how it feels very much like medieval England in many ways, but it's clearly not. I like his writing style. I think he's a good writer. So I think that's about all I can say until I can formulate some more thoughts and write an actual review for this.
Okay, the last book I have here is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I actually haven't completed this book. We're filming this on the last day of April, and I intend to complete it tonight. I have about 90 pages left. It's a really fast-paced book, and so that's why I think, and it's not difficult to read, so that's why I think I'm going to be able to tackle it. And I tend to read it in really big chunks because it really draws me in. The things I like about it so far, and keep in mind that I think all of these things I'm about to say are applicable and will be even after I finish the story. So, no disclaimers, aside from that one. Okay. It's
late. It's too late to be filming.
It's focused very much around games, and I always I really like that in stories. So when I read the title, The Inheritance Games, I was thinking things like Wonderland Trials, Hunger Games, that type of game vibe. And it's definitely different than that, but not in an unsatisfactory way. It's more focused on puzzles and riddles and rhymes. The premise of the story is a character inherits a massive sum of money from someone she has not related to and has never heard of or met before. And so the whole point of the game is her and the people she's doing this game with. It's like an unofficial game. It's not like a full game. I feel like people might have gotten that impression based on what I was comparing it to. It's an unofficial game. It's just a game to these people. My thoughts would be better if I'd finished the book by now. I want to say one last thing about it. One, it deals with puzzles and riddles and things like that, which is fun and cool, and I like to see it. And two, it's tying emotions into the game. And people playing games with emotions is such a big part of playing this game. And I think comparing those two and interlocking those two made it so much more intriguing and valuable. Yeah. I guess you guys are just gonna have to comment when this video comes out and ask me if I liked it at the end. I think that's all I have. I want to check my list one more time.
Well, while you check your list, I'll talk about the last book that I finished in the month of April, and that was Rebel's Creed by Daniel B. Green. This is the sequel to Breach of Peace. Daniel is a self-published author. He's also a very, very big booktuber. Probably everybody watching this video knows who he is. And
oh, Daniel boy.
There's
Daniel B. Sorry.
There's a lot of things about this book that I really appreciate, and there's a lot of things that I just it's more grimdark than I think I like, and I think that I just really don't want to read grimdark, and that's fine. I think I might continue on with this specific series because it's going to, or at least the Lawful Times, which is if there's more Lawful Times books, I don't know, because he changed his plans a little bit. But it does tie into his big series that he's trying to write. These were written for practice type thing. I will probably, let's see, I might finish Lawful Times and see if my interest is great enough to continue on or not. I appreciate some of the things that he did with the story. I like some of the storytelling aspects, some of the themes. I actually did write several things down about this that I will incorporate into my review when I get to that, but it wasn't my favorite book, and that's fine. I'm happy to have read it finally, to say, so that it's not sitting on my perpetual MBR, and so I'm glad that I've now read it, and I listened to the audiobook of that one, which he has up on his YouTube channel. So I just listened to that one day because I needed another book I needed a fantasy book with a mystery element, and that's what I ended up listening to.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
I kind of like the cover. It's a good self-pub cover, I feel like.
Felix Ortiz is the
silhouette in
cover
the front,
artist.
which he talks about in his...
But it's not someone standing posing.
That's true. I really like, I don't know if you guys can see it on camera, but there's like a face of a person or a creature or an idol or something, but with fiery eyes behind it. Looks cool. Also, it has someone known as the Survivor in it. Just saying.
Yep.
What does that remind you of? Sorry, we should be nice.
As cool as Kelsey, just saying.
It sounds interesting, actually. I might read it. Or I might read the first one and then
read the first one.
I'll just start in the middle of the series. Apparently I do that now.
It's rather gory.
Yeah, that's right.
You could actually read that one and not need to read the first one.
Guys, you know the thing about like me picking up book 2 before book 1? The fact is that happens like a lot, actually, especially at the thrift and the used bookstore. And so I really try and Google stuff, but sometimes it's harder to find it than you realize. I just want a big like number 1 or 2 on the spine, which I've still purchased books like that. But
yeah.
if it's the type of situation where it's a book that I have already read and I just want to own and add to my a voice lag. If it's a book I already have read and just want to add to my collection and I already know the edition I want to, then I'll buy it out of order. But if it's something I've never read before, never heard before, it's kind of unfortunate how frequently it happens to me. Okay.
Alright, we're gonna close this up because it's getting late and I still have to edit this video tonight and I have to go to work in the morning.
Way too much information for you guys today. You're welcome. Or sorry.
One of the two.
We
Thank you
post
guys for
videos
watching.
every Monday and Thursday.
Thank you guys for watching An Untitled Adventure. We post videos every
Monday and Thursday.
And we will have our social medias linked in the description down below. That's all the other thing. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.